Hello everyone. I am back with another video for you. As you know, we started just yesterday a new unit on percentages. And we learned a little bit about what a percentage is, how to write it, and what it really means. Well, over the next couple days, we are going to be working on converting between fractions and decimals and percents. So ultimately, what we want to be able to do, for example, so let me put an F here for a fraction, a decimal, and a percent, is if I give you a percent, like 34%, I am looking for you to be able to tell me what the decimal value is of that and what the fraction value is of that. Or if I give you the fraction of 11 out of 20, 24, let's say, for you to be able to give me what's the decimal value of that and what's the percent value of that. Or even one more, what if I give you the decimal, 0.32 or 32 hundredths? Can you give me the percentage? Can you give me the fraction? So over the next couple of days, we're going to work back and forth between trying to convert between fractions and decimals and percentages. So today, we're going to start with two types. Our goal is to be able to convert back and forth between fractions and percents. So we're just going to work on two here today. Okay, so let's start with this. If we look at my screen, we want to change a decimal to a percent. Okay, so my decimal here, if you think about how we read this 23 hundredths. You have two options to change it to a percentage, okay? And either one is fine. You are going to move it 2 spots to the right, again, because percents are out of 100. We're going to move it, the decimal 2 spots to the right. So in this problem, my decimal is before the 2. So if I move it 2 spots to the right, there would be 1, and this one would be 2. So the decimal of 23 hundredths is actually worth 23, and then we put the percent sign behind it. Okay, now the other option you can do is you can type in your calculator 0.23, and you can multiply, as it says here, by 100. And that will also give you 23%. So either one of these options is fine. You can move it 2 spots to the right or multiply by 100. Either one. Because that's really what you're doing. When you multiply by 100, all you're really doing is moving your decimal 2 spots. That's all you're doing. So if my decimal is 7/10, and I'm going to move it 2 spots to the right, I have 1 spot, but I don't have another one. So what we need to do is you need to add a 0, because adding a 0 does not change the value. Adding a 0 to the right, I should say, will not change the value of your number when you're adding it to a decimal. So there's 1. Now I have 2 spots to move it. So 7/10 is actually equal to 70%. Okay, again, you could also type in 0.7 and multiply by 100, and it will give you the exact same thing. Okay, one last one here. 1 and 25 hundredths is the formal way to say that. 1 and 25 hundredths. We're going to move it 2 spots to the right. So 1, 2. My decimal would be here at the very end. So 1 and 25 hundredths is actually equal to 125%. Anytime you have a whole number, whether it's 1, 2, 3, whatever it may be, you're going to have a percentage over 100 because it means you have one whole and then some. Okay, again, we could have also multiplied this by 100. So to change a decimal to a percent, you have two options. Move this 2 spots to the right or multiply by 100. Okay, so I have put 3 problems on this next page. If you would please pause my video and change these to percentages. Okay, give you a minute to do that, and then unpause our video and start. Okay, so the first problem you did was 3 1600ths. So if I move it 2 spots to the right, 1, 2, you should have gotten 316%. The next one was 0.2 or 2/10. So we moved it once, and we did not have another spot to move it, so we had to add a 0. And so we ended up getting 20%. And then the third one here was 7800ths. So if we move it 1, 2 spots, you get 78%. And again, you have a choice of moving it 2 spots to the right or multiplying by 100. Either one of those gives you the same answer. Okay, so it's pretty simple to change a decimal into a percent. Okay, so now we are going to work on changing a fraction into a decimal. Now, the fraction 1/2, many of you may already know what decimal value that is worth. But one way to do this is to use division, because this fraction bar, while we identify it as a fraction bar, it also means divide. This really means 1 divided by 2. So we could do some division here and divide, and you would find that the decimal is 0.5. So we could do some long division, yes, and get an answer. But we want you to focus on using the calculator here. And when you plug this into the calculator, you are going to plug it in as 1 divided by 2. So start at the top and work your way at the bottom. You will plug into the calculator 1 divided by 2, and you will find that you get an answer of 0.5. And many times, some of your calculators may put a 0 in the front. That's the same thing. Okay, don't let it bother you. So if you were plugging 19/25 into the calculator, you would be plugging in 19, again, top divided by bottom. We'll start at the top. So 19 divided by 25. Okay, and you would get yourself an answer of 0.76. So the decimal value of the fraction 19/25 is 0.75. Okay, and then lastly, we have the fraction 15/24. So if you start at the top and plug in 15 divided by 24, you would get, let me write this down here just so to help some folks, 15 divided by 24. Okay, you would get an answer of 0.625. Okay, fairly simple to turn a fraction into a decimal. Top divided by the bottom. And sometimes you're going to get numbers that go on forever, or sometimes you may get ones that repeat. And we'll talk to you more about how we're going to handle those when we are in person in class. These are sort of the ones that come out a little bit neater that we're working on here today. So I'm going to show you the next page. Would you please do like we did before? Pause, try these 3 problems, and then start the video back up to check. Okay, please turn these 3 fractions into a decimal. Pause the video. Okay, let's see how you did. So the first fraction is 1/4. This means 1 divided by 4. So that's exactly what you're plugging in the calculator. And when you do so, hopefully you got 0.25 or 25/100ths. 4/5 should go in your calculator as 4 divided by 5, and you will get 8/10. And 9/20 you'll plug in, as 9 divided by 20, and you will get 0.45 or 45/100ths. Okay, so to change the fraction into a decimal, you're just plugging in top divided by bottom. Simple. Okay, now we're going to put what we just learned together. Both of those items we're going to put together here. And our goal is to change the fraction to a percentage. Okay, so in order to do that, we need to convert the fraction to a decimal, which we just worked on, and then take that decimal and make it into a percent. So we're combining both items. So let's watch. So 1/4. We want to first convert it into a decimal, and that's what we just did. We did your top divided by the bottom, right? So we would be plugging in 1 divided by 4, and hopefully you got the decimal of 0.25. Now we need to take the decimal, as it says here, and make it into a percent. And we did that by moving it 2 spots to the right. So 1, 2, or multiplying by 100. So the fraction 1/4 actually means 25%. Okay, let's look at another one here. So my fraction is 4/5. So we're going to start by converting it into a decimal. We're going to do 4 divided by 5. And as you do 4 divided by 5, you will get the decimal, hopefully, of 0.8. And then lastly, we now need to convert this into a percent. So either multiply by 100 or move 2 spots to the right. There's 1. I need to add a 0 to move to my second spot. So 4/5 is actually worth 80%. Okay, and then lastly, 9/20. So start by dividing. 9 divided by 20. And you will get 0.45 would be your decimal. And if we move it 2 spots to the right, 1, 2, you get the decimal of 45%. Okay, so we're combining both of the items here. We're changing the fraction into a percent. Okay, so I would like for you to do what we did before. I have 3 new problems up here. Your goal is to change each fraction into a percent. So please pause my video, try these 3, and then come back and check. Okay, let's see how you did. In the first problem was 21/24. So if you plug 21 divided by 24 into your calculator, you'll get 0.875. And then you have to move it 2 spots to the right to convert it to a decimal. So your percentage should be 87.5%. Okay, your 2 steps are listed over here. 21/28, you plug in 21 divided by 28, and you'll get 0.75 or 75 hundredths. And then we move it 2 spots to the right, and you'll end up with 75%. 6/30 is 6 divided by 30. You'll get the decimal of 0.2. And then when you move it 2 spots, you'll find you needed to add a 0 to be able to move 2 places, which is 20%. So we should be able to change a fraction into a percent. And a lot of times it helps for you to think of this as grades. What would you have gotten if you got 21 out of 24 on something, or 21 out of 28? It may help you to think of it as grades when you're determining your percentage here. And lastly, I want to work through 2 word problems here with you. Let's look at the first one. Jaden's science test contains 24 questions. He got 21 questions right. What percent did he get right? Okay, so we're trying to figure out a percentage. In order to figure out that percentage, we need to start by making a fraction. So if you remember, when you make a fraction, what's always on the top is the part, and what's always on the bottom is the whole or the total, whatever it's out of. Right? So if we look at our problem here, what it's out of, or what our whole is it had a whole of 24 questions. So that's going to go on the bottom. And what was his part that he got right? He got 21 right. So Jaden got 21 out of 24 on his quiz. So again, you should know how to change this into a decimal. So you would plug in 21 divided by 24, and you would get 0.875. And then lastly, to change it to a percent, we've got to move it 2 spots to the right. So you would see that Jaden got an 87.5 on his quiz, which most schools will round this up and say he got an 85%. But you had to start by making a fraction. Okay, let's look at one more problem. The store received a box that contained 75 oranges. 15 of those oranges were rotten. So we want to know what percent of the oranges were rotten. Remember, on your bottom is always the total or the whole, what it's out of. Okay, and on the top is your part. So if we look, our problem tells us that there was a total of 75 oranges. And our part that we're asking about is the rotten ones, and there was 15 of them. So there's our fraction to start with. So turn 15 75ths into a decimal, which you will get 0.2. And then to move that 0.2 into a percentage, move it one spot, move it two spots, and you are going to end up with 20% of the oranges were rotten. So today, we worked on changing a fraction into a decimal. So we worked on this one right here. And we also worked on changing a decimal into a percent. So you do have some practice to do today. This note sheet is in Schoology. If as you're working on it, bring it up. Now we will get to some of these other ones later in the week. We've only worked on 2 of them here today. Okay, but use this if you need it and use your calculator for the assignment. Okay, good luck and message us if you need anything. Thanks.